This week on the show, we're joined by Super Bunnyhop. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support it, make sure to check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/KojimaFreak.
Are you like me where if you, like a normal day is like 40 to 50 tabs?
I think I'm in more the mid-30s.
Okay, so I have a problem then. That's what I'm hearing.
Similar ballpark, and I imagine similar problems arise from that too.
My tab addiction literally necessitated the addition of 16 gigs of RAM to my PC today.
Necessitated, you say?
Yes, because I'm also trying to do software development at the same time, which is not smart.
Oh, so it's more demanding than just like 50 tabs of the latest blue box conspiracy theory.
Right. Yeah, I can basically either have Visual Studio running or Chrome at this
Chrome,
point.
pick one, yeah.
Yeah,
With the 50 tabs with like pieces of string connecting them all together in a grand plot.
Hey, I'm Fingers.
Yo, it's Apache Smash.
Hey everyone, this is Days Ahead.
And I'm Nitroid. You're listening to the Kojima Frequency. There's still a lot of that. I can't believe, like, this long after the fact, people are still doing that.
So what's the latest? I heard it was like officially canceled or something.
I don't think it was officially canceled, but man, they're being very indirect about what they're doing.
That's not good.
No, it's not.
I think they would have learned by now.
Everything about this screams huckster who got in over their head.
I haven't once been excited for it either. Like the anything that they've shown, I've just been like, okay. Like none of it has been like, oh, I can't wait to see the next bit of that. It's just been
right.
I don't get the appeal at all here, unless it, I mean, I guess that's why people threw the Silent Hill thing on there. It's just like that IP makes that one footprint a big deal. But if without it, it's just like tech demo. Okay.
I don't understand the argument because that first trailer was okay, right? Like, is the argument, oh, this looks just crappy enough, so clearly it's Kojima pulling one over on us? Really?
I think that these are the sins of Joakim Mogren coming back to haunt us all.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good title right there.
He did not really know what beast he was unleashing with that stunt. To be fair, you would think he would, because, you know, everything was all predicted in Metal Gear Solid 2 anyway, but...
Right, like, I kind of want to blame, as much as I love MGS2, I kind of want to blame it for this. Like, that's patient zero.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
there's too much garbage talk in the primordial soup of the memes.
Yep. And then he did it again with PT.
Well, with PT, people had it figured out in like it was more than a day, but I think it was around a week-ish. But people still figured it out really, really fast.
I shit you not, within, I want to say, a half hour of the Phantom Pain trailer hitting the internet, someone texted me and said, dude, look at this image. Somebody overlaid Metal Gear Solid over the title. It's totally MGSV.
That's how it works these days.
But that's another sort of nail in the coffin to this whole line of thinking, is that if this were the case, are we just to believe that, like, okay, these past two little fun ARG type marketing things that he's done in the past, people solved that super quick. Everybody knew what it was. But this time it's this 5-year clandestine, like, deep op that he has structured. Like, is that really no, that's, what is the point? What is the benefit here?
The nail in the coffin of most, if not all, conspiracy theories is trying to figure out what the motive would be.
Yeah, I don't get the end game. And I've seen so many people who are like, you just got to look at the connections, and you got to see how this connects to this, and how this and mirrors that, and this and that. And I just look at it and I'm like, okay, but to what end? How does this sell more video games?
Right? Like is deep and meaningful as the art of video games can be, the the sad reality at the end of the day is that there's still kind of commercial art that's supposed to sell a
Mhm.
product at some point in the process.
And look, I'm all in on the it's art, side of the debate here, but I mean, come on.
Although I would absolutely positively love to see Kojima go full like RPG maker dev. Like just making weird stuff for free with no budget. Like he might as well. It'll get hundreds of thousands of people will play whatever he stamps his name on. So
It also lends to my headcanon that Toby Fox is his bastard child.
well, was it the moral of the story of MGS2 is that by playing MGS2 we are all bastard childs of Kojima's genetic memes?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. It's just that we, instead of, passing on like we were supposed to, we all like actually acted like children and cried for something more.
the inventon terribles.
I'm trying to do the whole of MGS3 blindfolded, but it's just kind of on hold for a little bit.
The fact that you can do the bosses blindfolded is insane enough, dude.
Actually, you were trying a challenge that George had initially done, right?
Oh no.
Yeah, so George, your no weapons run of MGS3.
No trank, no non-lethal European extreme.
Yeah, I want to do that single segment Foxhound. I've got the route, but I just need to actually do it.
What does single segment mean?
No saves.
Oh, so you have to do it all in one sitting?
Yeah.
I have so many questions, but I don't know how far like off topic we're allowed to get.
What?
Go for it.
Go for it.
So how do you prepare for that sort of session dietarily? What do you eat, and how do you schedule your bathroom breaks?
So I'm gonna go for Foxhound on it. So as soon as I make a mistake, it's done. And I have to start from the beginning again. I've got a strong diet of cigarettes and Monster Energy drink, so
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, it's more about just like
Breakfast of champions.
working out. Like I had to work out find a strat for every single room. I had to find something for the Fury because you use the Mosin Nagant, but I'm just going to kill him with rolls, which is hard as you'll know, because sometimes he just doesn't play nice.
Wait, does that leave like less room for mistakes? Because you said if you make one mistake, then you have to start over.
Yeah, so if I die or if I get caught anywhere, then I start from the beginning.
So are rolls into the pain and actually, or not the pain? It was the Fury, right?
Yeah, the Fury.
Is that actually a more safer, like risk mitigating strategy than the Mosin Nagant?
No, the Mosin Nagant's what we use in like the normal speedrun. Kills him in 8 hits. It's super good.
So you just it is just to show off.
It's to just make it harder. It's like I like doing challenge runs of the game. Like I did like European Extreme
Oh my gosh.
with Tuxedo. All
You just did the
camos and-
cigar run too, right?
I haven't done a Foxhound run of it yet, but I'm working on it.
Sounds like
and
a real life cigar run.
Just drains your health while you're doing it. The more you're
Right,
focused
the
on
game
that
while
run.
chain smoking. You have to finish it back.
He bought like an imported cigar to celebrate when he
Yeah, I got-
finishes that run.
I got the same one that he has in the game. Like they're called Petite Upmans. What JFK used to smoke. I
They're
imported one.
petite, but they're like this huge chunk.
They are big. Yeah, no, they are big. And it was like 25 quid.
The minigun of cigar products.
So we're all definitely familiar with you, George. But for the people that are listening and aren't familiar, if you wanted to give yourself like a quick introduction.
Hello. I am special guest George. I am a YouTuber video essayist who does a lot of like criticism and research and sometimes news and journalism. And like 10 years ago, some of my most popular videos were about critically analyzing Metal Gear Solid games. And then 5 years ago, some of my most popular videos were journalistic coverage of Kojima leaving the Konami offices and a lot of the minutiae and details and wacky predictions that turned out to come true that were happening around that time. Yes, hello, that is me.
I've got to ask, which prediction specifically sort of made you go, okay, wow.
The big one was that Konami would just like stop doing video games altogether. And like they didn't 100% go all the way out, but after Metal Gear after Metal Gear Survive, like there was this absolute drought where it's like basically some really like surefire bread and butter Yu-Gi-Oh tie-in titles, and that was it. And for like a legacy software publisher that like put names like Metal Gear Solid and Castlevania on the map, it was quite a shock to hear that was what people on the inside were thinking was about to happen.
So there was some expectation.
Yeah. Yeah, they switched to like low effort mode where it was like, you got Contra Rogue Corps and, the collections. I am thankful for the collections that they've been putting out. We got that Cowabunga collection on the way, but
there was the GOG re-release as well, but
Yeah.
The thing that turned out to be true was that, wow, it's been freaking nothing for years upon years at this point.
Yeah.
And
I mean, as of the last, I think oh my God, how long has it been since the license, like MGS2 and 3 has been revoked? Now
7
it's
months.
almost a net negative instead of nothing, instead of neutral.
Oh, and the whole while we were just talking before doing these official introductions about how that just seems to have made the fans hungrier and more ravenous and more ready to accept anything as a big reveal. I remember when the news was breaking that all these big companies were buying each other out a few months ago when Microsoft bought Bethesda and then Activision later, and the big rumors circulating around, there was always someone's gonna buy Konami rumor swirling around, or Konami's gonna buy someone else to get the Konami games flowing again.
Thing is, though, I don't think anything like that is likely to happen. Most people don't really know
Right.
that Konami is a family business.
But people are thirsty. People who
Yeah.
aren't super duper invested weirdos like us. But yeah, the thirst levels are that's just gotten unreal since the official breakup between Kojima and Konami, and now everything's a conspiracy in real life anyway. Let alone whatever is happening around Kojima's own personal projects.
Have you been keeping track of some of the clock conspiracies? I don't know if you guys were talking about that before I joined the channel, but
no, we didn't get to the clocks yet.
Oh man.
I typed this search phrase into Google, Kojima clocks, and see an article with the headline that fans have spotted a series of clocks on Kojima's Instagram that seem to ominously be counting down to midnight. What could it mean?
we don't know what it means, but it's
You know what's-
provocative.
Well, I'll tell you, I let myself go down the rabbit hole a little bit the other night, and I came to the startling conclusion that the clocks were just, at least the analog clock, was just showing the time in Los Angeles.
I refuse to believe it. No, it is counting down to the announcement for Boktai 3. You just wait and see.
But we already got that. It's good.
Snatchers 2, Police Knots Revelations, all that old shit is about to get re-released, and that's what the clocks mean.
I am holding out for an HD remaster of that stock trading game that they worked on.
Wait,
what
there
they
was a stock
needed.
trading game?
Yeah,
Hold
Kojima Productions made 2 stock trading training games.
How do I not know about that? What?
Yeah.
Oh my god!
I think it was it's something like Stock Training Trader Kabutore,
Stock
something like
trading, training.
Stock
Kojima
Training
investing in
Trader.
stock-
Yeah.
So this is from 2006. Okay,
Yeah,
so that kind of
it's
sort of
going way back.
explains why I might not have known about it.
But they did like 2 of them.
So
They
really,
were-
Cruelty Squad was not breaking new ground.
Kojima setting the benchmark once again.
He makes a snide tweet about it. He's like, "Well, I did do that, and that's stock trading the game."
I wonder what sort of dire predictions turned out to be true in that one.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the story.
But anyways, do we have confirmation that these clocks really are indeed merely the reproduction of the time in Los Angeles at the time of the photo?
At least the one I checked was.
Well,
My thing is, and it's funny how we just kind of discuss a possible, or the universe where Kojima makes like a free to play game, RPG Maker game. But the one thing that caught my eye was not the clocks necessarily, but just the amount of office space that he had. Like the scale, the vaulted ceilings. It makes me wonder sort of, what scale his next project is going to be. But again, I'm trying not to dive into it because I'm trying not to be that guy.
so was I remember when these cryptic photos were first posted of him showing his office getting cleaned out. There were a bunch of cryptic conspiracy theories over whether or not they had declared bankruptcy or were getting ousted by the feds. I don't know. Did it turn out to be way more innocent and innocuous than all that?
That would be amazing if he got ousted by the feds. They were running a meth lab the whole time.
He's like the actual Gus Fring, but for like video games.
He is Mr. Big.
Mr. Big Boss.
God. No, it looks like they just needed to move to a bigger office. It is kind of strange seeing him sort of scale up that much. A long time ago.
Yeah, bigger.
Yeah. Well, he had talked before about, I think it was around the time of MGS3 or 4. I can't quite remember, but he mused once about the difficulties of having these bigger teams and how it was harder to sort of keep, sort of a centralized, unified vision for a game when you've got so many people in such a large team, and it just becomes harder to manage. And so maybe it's because they want to get into other areas than just game development. I know he's talked about making movies and anime, and there's going to be the LA studio and all those things. So maybe that's why they're expanding.
Yeah, but I also remember a lot of quotes shortly after the release of Death Stranding about how it had sold quite a bit under expectations. So that also kind of sort of
Did it
would
though?
contradict
Because
the prediction of them going bigger rather than smaller.
I've read a lot of those reports, and they all seem to be conjecture with no actual numbers. The most anyone could say is Sony usually brags when something sells well, and they didn't this time.
There's a quote from him. He said something like,
He made a joke like, if I like,
Oh,
if there's a
right.
comment,
Prophet.
he was like,
Yeah.
if I could predict the future, everybody's like, oh, he predicted the future with Death Stranding. He's like, if I could predict the future, then Death Stranding would
So he
probably
would've
have had more
sold
sales.
more copies. Right, right.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't be surprised if it ended up turning around in the long tail with the PC and next gen re-releases, as well as more positive voices of critical praise, sort of eking out of the meme soup in the year after that first
Right.
launch.
Everyone's talking about how that predicted Fox died, etc. I said the word. We're going to get algorithms now.
Or at least made it way more relatable.
Right. Meanwhile, Konami is making, I think they had $1.71 billion in revenue last year. Something like that. Just absolutely ridiculous.
You can't
Health centers
forget,
opening right back up.
They also run the gyms.
Yep.
That is true. That is true.
I wish it was or more common knowledge or more easier to know what sort of other businesses these big multinational conglomerates have their fingers in, because it is hard to tell sometimes over here. And it was always shocking when I was in Japan when I would see the Konami logo on random buildings that had nothing to do with video games. and the Square Enix logo on like book publishing and stuff.
That's right. You did go to Japan. You were was it specifically for not to change the subject, but I wanted to ask you about this. It was when you went to Japan, was it specifically for that Metal Gear Solid
Specifically.
yeah, the escape room, yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the patchy slot machine actually.
Oh, I guess yeah, you did that too.
Yeah.
But I guess specifically for those.
Specifically, right? Yeah, it might as well. And I was planning one for the Nintendo theme park launching in Universal Studios Tokyo, and then the search engine optimization term happened.
Yeah, that kind of killed a lot of plans. I hear they're finally opening back up, albeit slowly now, though.
But yeah, I don't see why not. If I can make a fun video out of the trip and get some tax write-off business expenses from it too, and
Oh man, I didn't even
it's
think
a
about that.
good reason to go.
All right, we got to plan a trip now.
Right.
Well,
on
it was a
time.
lot easier before the Backstreet Boys reunion tour. Now you have to like quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel before you're allowed to leave and go into Japan proper. You have to go through a processing facility and something.
Yeah.
And they had tourism closed down for months upon months. It might even still be closed down. I've been trying to pay attention to that again, and it just makes me sad.
Yeah,
But,
they're not screwing around.
No, they don't want to take chances. Which
I've
is funny.
accepted. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's funny because for a while, for the first year and a half, I think they were reporting fairly benign case numbers in Japan, but I think nowadays the numbers are getting higher since they went through with a version of the Olympics. But I was planning on going back for real life Nintendo Land, and that did not pan out.
I've just accepted that, if I decide to go to Nintendo Land, I will have to accept I'll be going to Florida to do so. So, 2023, everyone.
Oh, that's right. They are opening one here too, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah, but yeah, Super Bunnyhop is the #1 name, and the latest breaking hot news stories that come here before they're released in the West, and I guess I'll have to wait for Florida too now.
Well, I'll see you there. Oh, well.
Because, I mean, what are the chances of a Metal Gear Solid escape room opening in the West? Like zilch, right?
Yeah. What are
It
the
is-
chances of Metal Gear Solid anything at this point?
It is so weird to think back on something that I did like 2.5 years ago that already now seems like something that'll never happen again for the rest of history. And
It's like
I
a
just,
different world, It's,
yeah,
it's...
like you really don't know what you got till it's gone.
I do have to ask one thing about the Japan trip. This may be a stupid question, and I feel like you even answered it in one of your videos, but what's up with the noodle footage?
Okay, so
The floating noodles.
the noodle footage is what we in the business like to call B-roll, where if you don't really know what to throw onto the screen on a certain chunk of narration, just fill it up with footage of noodle machines. That's what that term means. Yeah, it's a cool noodle machine that genuinely had me fascinated at first glance. And it looks like there's this gravity-defying magic going on until you get up close and see the zipper and the costume, so to speak. But I don't know why it's of question. It looks like a normal magical noodle machine to me. I'm surprised it's such a big deal with everyone.
That's some good B-roll, I guess.
I'm always on the watch out for it. Anytime there's a
Right,
video
right.
with any relevance to Japan, I'm like, all right, where is it?
Yeah.
Somewhere.
And now since I have adopted my new puppy dog Eddie, I am beginning a practice of including E-roll in videos where I'll just have footage of me playing with my dog over me talking about stocks.
I just got a puppy as well.
Aren't they wonderful?
No, shit's all over my house.
That'll stop
Aw.
soon.
And he's got like razor sharp teeth, and when he plays, he tends to like bite, and he's not aware of like how sharp his teeth are yet.
Are you sure you didn't get a cougar?
Anyone could see that's a wolf!
Well, he's it's gonna become wonderful. Just give him some time.
Yeah, no, I fucking love him. I actually love him. He's so great.
With a name like Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty, I mean, he'll turn out all right.
Yeah, he just needs time. He just needs time, and then he'll be appreciated.
Yeah, if you don't like him now, you'll like him when he's older.
Well,
Did you actually name him that on paper? I feel like an idiot even asking this. You
Of course I
did?
did.
No, you
Oh,
did.
Of course I
no.
did.
What are you gonna say when you gotta shout their name really fast?
MGS2.
It wasn't like I was not shouting Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty before I had a puppy, so.
Like I'm imagining you running through the street chasing after this dog,
Metal Gear Solid 2.
shouting hysterically down the sidewalk like Paul Revere.
I can already see the ring or the next door alert. Lost pet Metal Gear Solid 2.
Sons of Liberty. Only on
You should-
Xbox.
God, just report him missing for like 5 minutes and then say, oh, wait, no, I found him, just to get that alert to go up.
Yeah.
And then post another one. Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty is still missing because Konami won't buy those fucking license renewals.
Yeah.
When you're at the vet and you're filling out paperwork, and there's the line where it says where the dog's name goes, what do you write there?
I just put his full name. It's all good.
Oh my god.
It's really fun every single time.
Konami
someone asks me
literally
his
stole
name.
his dog.
It's stolen. Taking it back. No.
What do you do when you go to check the mail and you find a subpoena to go to court because Konami is suing you for misuse of their trademark?
Konami
What do
no
you
way
do
gonna sue me,
then?
no one. Could you imagine? That'd be so
I
funny.
thought you were gonna say he got a subpoena because Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty like bit a mailman or some shit.
That would be the
What's
most
your
interesting
plan?
case.
You gotta have a plan.
I had a plan to get another one and call him Snake Eater actually, but it's proven to actually be quite difficult to have a puppy. I get like 4 hours sleep now because he wants to play all the time. He wakes me up really early.
What kind of dog is he?
He's a Legoto Romagnolo, so everyone thinks that he's a cockapoo, but he's Legotos are like the
That
only
sounds like a
purebred
fruit in
truffle dog.
MGS3.
It sounds like
For-
something you order at an Italian.
Until I googled it, I thought you were like screwing with me.
No, but you catch on quick if you think I would screw with you. So
So the Legoto Roman, the Romagnolo Legoto Roman, the Romagnolo Legoto Roman Gnolo, pronounced Lagoti Romagnolo, is a breed of dog from northern Italy that traces its origin back hundreds of years. There, I did it.
yeah, he's a Lale Lule Legoto.
Oh, get out of here.
So I couldn't do it. I couldn't help myself.
You're done. We're done.
couldn't help
We're
myself.
done. This joke's over. That was taken too
Why? I can't believe this is a real dog breed.
far. You please get a collar with like the name printed on one of those little things, and
Yeah,
take a
but
picture of it.
But I've heard that if you get the dog's name printed on the collar, when people go to steal it, they can call its name. But if I get it printed, they would probably just be more confused.
Yeah.
We're all confused.
They'd be like, oh, is this like Metal Gear Solid 2 merch? Like, it's like actual dog tags.
I'll get the
Kojima's
tag.
avant-garde marketing gone too far.
What if there's some kind of local news story, like an apartment complex burns down, and the reporter is interviewing you on the scene about the damage, and they need your name and your dog's name to write the report. Are you still going to give them the actual? Are you gonna tell
You
the
better.
world on the news that in front of like the ruins of burnt buildings that you named your dog Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty?
Absolutely.
If anybody will do that, Apache would.
He's doing more with that title than Konami is.
Greatest Hits Collection HD. Re-release by Blue Box Games.
Anything to bring awareness.
Re-release would be if it had puppies.
That's dedication. Wow. I'm impressed, actually.
Oh my God.
But yeah, puppies are great.
Your dog, if it knew, it would hate you.
Yeah, I think it does. It bit me today. So
Anyway.
Sort of off topic. People, I always have to remind folks that like I named my cat BB before Death Stranding was even like announced, or before like BB was a thing, just because I couldn't think of a name, so I just kept calling her Baby Girl, and then evolved to BB, and then Kojima stole my shit. No, just kidding.
No, if Kojima does something that someone else already did, it becomes his. That's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, you know how weird it is, actually, speaking of that, how weird it is watching movies after a childhood of growing up on Metal Gear Solid instead of like 80s, 90s action movies. And
Oh, God, I
realizing the
bet.
references are going the other way than you thought they were going.
Oh God,
Yes.
yeah.
Like that scene where Metal Gear Solid 3, he jumps off a dam and there's like 3 camera angles of him falling down, and I remember seeing it parodied on The Simpsons. And as a kid, I was like, wow, I can't believe The Simpsons is so
into Japanese video
Convalescent.
games.
yeah, so
So many
aware
Metal
of
Gear
culture
references.
that they'd reference Metal Gear Solid, and boy, I felt like an idiot 10 years later.
There's also Homer backing up into the bushes. That's a Snake Eater moment.
Yeah, that was inspired by the camo system of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater Greatest Hits Collection for the Xbox One all-in-one home entertainment system, which is the name of my iguana.
You are. It is funny going backwards with it all though, because I got into a lot of the films that have like mentioned in Metal Gear Solid 3 because of Metal Gear Solid 3, and all those things inspired Metal Gear, and then I got into them all because of Metal Gear.
I remember where I was the day I found out that the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 2, when he splashes down on the tanker and there's electricity everywhere. I remember where I was when I learned that was basically a shot stolen from Terminator 2.
And you got Solidus and his flame trails taken from Back to the Future.
And straight up naming your badass hairy man Snake. You
Yeah.
know?
Right.
Like,
Snake.
go
That's just
in-
getting blatant.
My name's Pliskin.
Ooh.
Jeez, where'd you get that?
Actually, watching the Escape from New York movie as a Metal Gear Solid fan is such a trip every time.
Right?
It's like, whoa, he really didn't come up with this stuff in a vacuum. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I kind of have to wonder, like, what is the most just egregious example of borrowing something from Hollywood? And why is it Die Hard Men?
I was about to say Police Knots and the whole Lethal Weapon thing, but yeah, definitely Die Hardman's.
Actually, there. Oh man, I hate to say it, but there is kind of a consistency between Police Knots and Die Hard Man, and that is like Black Sidekick inspired by an action movie. With because isn't Police Knots, what's his face, like supposed to be Donnie Glover?
Yeah, it's Riggs and Murtaugh in
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, and then like the same thing with John. He's even named John McClane. What the fuck?
Oh no, I have space cancer. That's the plot twists in Police Knots. Everyone thinks they're a cool guy, but then they find out they have space cancer.
Yeah, space. You think it's fun, but it's not.
That's the moral. That literally actually is the moral of the story in
Yeah.
Police Knots.
There is some clever stuff in there though, where you can tell he was reading, like science journals and just tabloids, magazines, anything he could get his hands on to get ideas for technology. The white blood from Police Knots and then later, used in Metal Gear. I might be wrong on the specifics here, but I dug into this a little bit, and there was an early experimental artificial blood called Fluosol that was developed in Japan in the 80s, and it was white. So artificial white blood predates Police Knots.
So that comes from Kojima reading science journals just for fun.
I honestly think,
as one does.
I think he does. I mean, he's talked about doing it before, but look, I love his games. I really, take a lot of inspiration from him. But there is this interesting belief that he is some sort of a prophet that comes up with these ideas, like you said, in a vacuum, and he does not. He just reads a lot.
Very worldly, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see why a very individualist, in a very individualist world, someone this worldly would be so revered or seen.
I mean, even in the case of even in the case of Metal Gear Solid 2, those were not new ideas. That it was just they hadn't been put together into a piece of, pop culture media yet. But they'd been floating around for decades.
It was still like cutting edge for the time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And medium. Like it was like late 90s postmodernism riding on this wave of House of Cards and X-Files, like pop culture getting self-aware and
right, and then tying that in with the internet being what it was at the time, it was just the right thing at the right moment. It might not have landed with everybody, but how many years has it been? It went from do you remember at the time when that game came out, people really did not like the story at all.
I remember reading such opinions in the curated and published letters to the editors sections of video game magazines, because that is largely what people had back then. And then thinking to myself, oh my god, the Lalelulelo is selecting what information I'm being exposed to. And
the Lalelulelo does not want you to like this game.
As the years went on, having the villain of this game be an imaginary amalgamation of the opinions of Americans being manipulated through electronic media was as prophetic as everyone says it is. I'm just now realizing I'm not really saying anything new here. So much as we just seem to be appreciating the genius of Kojima. Oh.
Well, okay, let me ask you this.
Yes.
On that same note, with how MGS2 has sort of found its audience, so many years after the fact, do you think that might happen with MGSV? Because that's a little shakier,
Excuse me, MGS5?
Yeah, MGS5. We get yelled at for calling it V. We get yelled at for calling it 5. We've settled on MGS5.
I still see that game being referenced as the high point of the entire stealth genre as a whole, which I don't know might be another question to dissect and tear apart. But yeah, it still gets mentioned a lot, but always with the caveat that the story is not as good as the previous ones. But I see a lot of comments on Reddit, at least, and on Twitter, on the dregs of social media, that will cite it as the all-time stealth game of all time.
I don't think anybody really argues with, how good the gameplay is. It's ridiculous how well that controls. But when it comes to the story...
But...
yeah, it's weird. It's got the perfect alibi.
I would not bring it on an island. I just, as good as it is, I don't want to only play that game until the rest of my days. As good as it is, I genuinely feel like we have so many places to go and have been in better places too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That game's faults, the theme of that game provides it with the perfect alibi for having those kinds of flaws.
It's the theme of missing something that got cut off that feels
Yeah.
like it should be there.
Right. It's annoying because you can't. It almost like rejects analysis in that regard.
It's hilarious, but wasn't that also like my fan theory when I was doing my video on it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so.
Oh god.
Oh my god.
Ah.
But it's not an invalid read of it, you know? And I mean, it wouldn't be the
Right?
first time that a game has that a Kojima game has done something like this. I mean, that was MGS2's whole shtick. You know, meta to a fault.
And it kept itself together up until the very end of the very last tape of the very last mission, when I remember a camera pulling back into a mirror, and that being the thing that all of a sudden made a fairly straightforward story suddenly postmodern and self-aware. So it's like the seed to take it that way is totally in there.
To sort of go a different direction then, because I've wanted to ask you this for a long time. The odds of you remembering this are probably slim to none, but I made a joke tweet at you a long time ago about your MGS4 critical close-up. And the essence of it was, did you MGS4 your MGS4 critical close-up?
In what way?
In the sense of it never really sort of coalesces into a clear idea. It just sort of gives people what they want to get it over
and
with.
Also kind of sort of makes a bunch of self-aware snide remarks about how old and played out the series is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty meta of your own videos there.
I appreciated that.
Well, what not enough people are talking about are the hidden ARG clues I threw into the Metal Gear Solid 2 video.
Wait, say that again? You cut out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh my god, it's almost like it's part of the ARG. He got cut off right at the like meat and potatoes.
It's like, damn it. This is good.
In order to keep things a fun game and stay in spirit of the personality we're a big fans of. I'm not going to say exactly where and when they are, but they're in there. They're clues to an ARG that linked to some fun files on a website I hosted some,
in the MGS4 one?
Sneaky Easter eggs onto. Yeah.
Oh man, I gotta go watch that again.
Yeah, we got some homework to do.
You don't have to go watch it. It was fun. Oh man, now the imposter syndrome's cutting in, and I'm reminded that people actually watch this stuff.
Don't. It's good stuff. It's entertaining. It's informative.
Yeah, but I was also like 10 years younger. One of the weirdest things about being an internet influencer person. My fellow video essayist Campster tweets about this a lot because he's also been doing it for 10 years, is that when you do something 10 years ago, it's on the permanent record forever. And so you constantly have to be like keeping in mind, oh yeah, people's frame of reference of me includes things from 10 years ago that they might have first discovered a month ago. And they're gonna like the soup that forms your personality from their frame of reference is like gonna be way off of your own, and it's weird.
But do you still agree with like that first sentence that started off the whole critical close-up, or just like your retro review series? I guess you just said this series is a clusterfuck.
Dude, it's become more of a clusterfuck since then. Like the fact that those are like the good old days of 2012 compared to now, not just the places that the Metal Gear Solid series itself has gone, but how its predictions on how people interact with media inform their ideas of truth. It's a clusterfuck. It's still a clusterfuck.
Yeah,
the world's
for sure.
more of a clusterfuck. It's an Ouroboros of clusterfucks eating each other.
I can see what you mean, though, because old content is sort of a snapshot of a version, not just of what you thought, but of who you are that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, people are always changing, and it's always been a weird, anachronistic thought to think that you can permanently stamp an image of yourself from young ago. I don't know. It's maybe similar in ways to some old media, like flipping through an old picture book and being like embarrassed at what you used to wear and how you used to carry yourself and what sort of, I guess, to put it more bluntly, what sort of person you used to be back then.
Yeah, Aldous Huxley describes it in the foreword for Brave New World. He calls it artist remorse. And you always feel weird about something you did in the past.
That is an elegant way of putting it.
Obviously, this does not warrant any sort of revisitation of the Critical Close-Up series, but what did you think of Metal Gear Survive?
I only played a beta demo and was not too very interested beyond that. And the review scores that came out didn't seem to defy my expectations. I do not think much of it. I hate to sound mean, but
no,
but
it's
to
fair.
answer the question, I have not thought of that game much over the past years at all.
From the
It's,
outside looking in, I can definitely like see how like yeah, I mean that's totally a respectable thing. You know, I guess like we both dived into it and just like tried to see it for what it was, kind of just played the hell out of it for a bit and had a good time.
and I do feel bad for the development team for being cursed with that sort of thing, where like
Yeah.
I have heard that it can be fun, that it's not bad, but it's just so not a like for the stealth gamer who wants to like sneak around guards and do slapstick comedy with them, and B, to release at a time like that with the kind of drama that was going on at the time.
Yeah.
And one of the many fun Metal Gear Solid conspiracy theories being those like cries for help that people supposedly left into Easter eggs of the game. Like that whole combination feels like a horrible amount of baggage to be cursed with for a project you're working on for 2 years or something at a time.
Yeah.
It's, ooh.
Did you ever play any of the Metal Gear Acid games?
A little bit.
They're kind of on par with like the first one, where it's just sort of an interesting mess.
But it didn't offend anyone.
Yeah.
You know?
But here's the thing, the question I want to know the answer to is, had Kojima not left and had they put out this exact same game as a spin-off,
It would have gone better.
then yeah, I mean, how
Right.
much of the negative response to that game comes from just, the sourness towards Konami over what happened?
That's the big elephant in the room that did sour it, was when Metal Gear Acid was coming out. There was no question that the series was not in jeopardy.
Right.
Yeah.
I remember Metal Gear Solid 4 being announced very early, shortly after MGS3, and they were making spin-offs between them, the Acid games and the portable games. And the difference between the environment when Metal Gear Solid Survive released is that it was in jeopardy. People thought that was... Ugh. People
Yeah.
thought, and might have thought rightly, that would be the note it would end on.
And it's a shame. I've read some interviews, very roughly translated interviews with some of the development staff, and the concept for that game was basically born out of them training new staff to come in and work with the engine and the tools that they had. And they had started playing around with the Fox engine and dropping objects in the room
Yeah.
randomly, and they were like, oh wow, this is a lot of fun. I wonder if we could do like a tower defense with this. Well, yes, but you can't really do a good tower defense with normal enemies with guns. They just shoot right through it. So what do? Oh wait, I got it. And that's kind of where it came from. So there's
But
like
I'm-
this,
I'm
it
sure
wasn't as cynical
controlled
as people
super
thought.
well. But how did it control? Did it control super well?
Oh, it
Yeah, it was-
controlled great. It was the Fox
Yeah.
engine plus like it was like a melee build of Fox engine. It was
Yeah.
like more focused on that and more focused on like pulling off special moves. I would give it a shot.
It's-
Like if you're just kind of looking for like a cheesy, campy, B movie type
It's weird.
storyline with a good engine, and it's just I don't know. Like I had a good time with it. But I take a ton of shit for it.
There's also some strange shades of Death Stranding in it. There are mechanics in that game that Death Stranding echoes.
Yeah, and it gets kind of like a horror game a little bit too in some parts where you're just like, all right, this is scary. Like when there's all those bugs on the ground crawling everywhere, you're like, oh, what the
Yeah.
hell? Like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I do remember some sort of scene involving a stormy weather scene and a giant monster thrashing around in it.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's weird. It's not to be taken too seriously or anything, but I think that's what some people are just like, oh, this is the way the direction of the series should go. And it was just, series was already dead. This was just a fun little spin-off, like using the leftovers of the Fox engine, I guess. So for me, I just dove in because I was craving pretty much anything Metal Gear related at that point. And seeing the Shagahad drift, you know, I mean, you can't really beat that. Calling in Metal Gear Ray to mop up some zombies. It's fun.
Because that's, and I don't
Yeah.
want to dwell on the negatives too much.
No,
though.
I mean that's kind of the crux of what I think made a lot of people angry is that Metal Gear went from this thing that was special and revered and so
Yeah.
carefully curated to now it's just another video game.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people would say too. They were like, "Yeah, if they removed the Metal Gear,
Well,
name
I
from this
don't
game, I'd
know.
enjoy it." And I was like, "Well,
But
just do
we-
that in
we-
your head then, and enjoy it." Like, what do you mean? Like,
We never got like a Metal Gear kart racing spin-off.
We kind of did.
we did get that one game with Gray Fox. That you could be. What was that?
Yeah, Konami Crazy Racers.
Yeah.
Oh my god, okay, I'm so sorry. Konami Crazy Racers exists.
We need a Metal Gear maker though. That's what
God.
would that would
Yeah,
solve
I
all
would
of our
like
problems.
that.
Just give us like a Mario maker. So.
Actually, for real? Oh, yeah, and after playing, what was it? That indie game that was like a Metal Gear Unmetal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, there is so much potential for 2D Metal Gear to come back in the spotlight,
right?
I think. I think the time is...
Wouldn't it be crazy if somebody was working on one of those?
I can't believe it hasn't even happened yet. That it's not a bigger subgenre of like indie game pixel art titles.
I've wondered this for a long time, and I've asked several guests we've had on this question, so I'm curious what you might think. But why do you think it is that there are so many sort of indie developer made derivatives of game archetypes, if you want to call them that? Mario, the Metroidvanias, Sonic, you name it. There's, you pick a famous classic game and somebody has made like some sort of a version of it,
Mm-hmm.
Either it's a fan game or something inspired by it. But for the longest time, Metal Gear has not had anything. It's only like recently we've seen like Unmetal, and I guess there's Undetected is sort of an MGS1 homage that'll be coming out soon.
Because the MSX was not popular in North America.
Yeah, but MGS1 was. So why is it only now people are starting to sort of poke at that?
I think it's because the MSX games have eluded your average mainstream, not your hardcore gamer, your average mainstream gamer
Yeah.
for so long. They have not played those. The only times they've released in the West were in like re-release collection packages, and if they had back in the late 80s and early 90s, I feel like they would be a huge part of the cornerstone of gaming culture, like Metroid, and I don't know, maybe not Mario, but
Yeah.
on the scale of Metroid,
right. Metal Gear never really hit that point, but
it came so close.
on the NES, I mean, the NES port of Metal Gear, if you want to call it a port, that
That's
sold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sold over 1 million copies in the West.
I worry that I might sound a bit mean by putting it this way, but among the 2D Metal Gear Solid games, we were wondering why they didn't become more of a like classical pillar of the indie pixel art retro gaming pantheon. And I just wonder if like the NES one that did get popular in the West, if you judge that thing by its own merits, even without the context of the whole rest of the series, I really wonder if it would have as much staying power as in a vacuum as Metal Gear 2 on the MSX would have. And Metal Gear 2 on the MSX is a freaking masterpiece.
Yeah.
It is, yeah.
But both versions of Metal Gear 1, I don't know if I'm too eager to like get on a
They're
hill
okay.
and defend. They're
Yeah,
fine.
they're fine.
But Metal Gear 2 is the masterpiece.
For sure.
It's
Yeah.
man, it's a crime we didn't get that here. when it came out.
Yeah,
'Cause that would have done well.
I really think it would have changed the way that like gaming history developed for a few years too. Like it would have been
Yeah.
a few years before gaming got seen as like this adult medium. It would have popularized stealth gaming a few years earlier than happened. It really would have sent us into a different timeline.
Yeah. Even that intro alone, like just on Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, just like that music and just that build up right there. It's, oh, man,
Yeah,
so
like in
good.
terms of games having a cinematic vibe and a deep involving storytelling techniques, I think you would see like Metal Gear and Final Fantasy become the pillars of these high standard, long running prestige franchises that it came really close. It came really close.
Yeah.
So then what about, MGS1 clearly sort of laid the groundwork for just about every action game made after it for years.
Yeah.
Almost
and what
everybody.
I could picture that happening a few years earlier had Metal Gear 2 come out in the West too.
Yeah.
Like a similar sort of rethinking of the way video games tell stories and what they can do with their stories. We may have been due for that a bit earlier.
I agree. Why do you think then that MGS1 didn't sort of have that effect after the fact in the indie space? Is it just because those kinds of games were too hard to develop until more recently? I mean, there are a ton of MGS1, I don't want to call them knockoffs because nothing's quite captured that, but you can point to games like
Siphon Filter,
Splinter Cell and Winback and Siphon Filter, and like there are a ridiculous number of examples of games that took cues from Metal Gear Solid, but when it comes to like indie games, no one really tried to do that until just recently. I mean, there's Volume and Undetected, and that's it.
I wonder if the simplicity of Metal Gear Solid's mechanics may be a factor at play here. Maybe a lot of ambitious indie developers want something a little meatier to chew on, because I've heard comparisons of MGS1 on the PlayStation 1, not any of the sequels, that it's surprisingly close to Pac-Man in execution. If you just zoom
I think
into the
Tim Rogers
Soliton
said
radar.
that actually.
Yeah, if you zoom into the Soliton radar and ignore all the other contexts going on, it might be a unattractively simplistic game for a lot of indie developers who might want to. I don't know. I don't want to. I'm just speculating. I don't know if that's really a thing, but I imagine if I wanted to make a game, I would certainly want to make it more complicated than the PSX one.
You were saying like in your retro reviews, like how like the level design in like the first couple games, really drove the game forward. In a series that's normally like narrative driven, you had just a lot of like cool gameplay things going on. It was a lot more gameplay focused then.
Yeah, and how they never repeat the same thing twice.
Yeah.
In MGS 1 and 2.
And 2 is probably just too mechanically sophisticated to really tackle, for just, a single indie dev.
Yeah,
even now that game's got a lot going on.
When you start getting into the territory of individual cubes of ice melting in real time on the countertop, the level of budget is in a whole new ballpark. God, I can't believe games still don't do stupid shit like that.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
Maybe Metal Gear Solid 2 really just prepped us for disappointment in terms of how in-game ice cube melting technology would go.
When that trailer dropped at E3, I remember reading interviews with other game developers, PC game developers, talking about how impressed they were with it. Watching this and going, how in the hell did they do that on a console? How are they doing this incredible cinematic work on a PlayStation 2 when we have when we've got PCs and we can't come close to this? What is going on?
Money.
Yeah, that's pretty much. I don't know if they actually ever said what MGS2's budget was, but I can't imagine it was small.
Oh gosh, I miss the days when games were that ambitious. Am I wrong for
No.
reminiscing about that?
No, you're not, because
the
there's
archetypes hadn't been established. Everything was with a big enough budget would be breaking some kind of new ground.
Yeah.
it was an emerging medium still in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. And now it's like everybody has this idea of, all right, games are this. And you've got this dichotomy now of people with resources but no real value for the art form, and people who value the art form but don't have any resources. And there's very little crossover between those two groups.
And there's also so much more of a formula that multiple
Yeah.
games of multiple genres will follow, where like every 4 seconds the player has to pick up a little blip of an interactive or something. MGS5 was super duper visible with a lot of the stuff. Like I think that around the mid 2010s, a lot of game developers started getting massive amounts of player data downloaded in through online research mediums like heat maps and stuff coming in that really sucked a lot of the individual flavor out of games that you could feel in your fingers when they're made by multiple studios tackling multiple genres. They all didn't have the same triple nested menu system with very, very similar character progression systems being spottable across different types of experiences.
It's like, gosh, I can't wait for the next AAA third-person action-adventure game with a progression skill tree and cinematic visuals.
There's always a fear that whatever they bring back is going to fold into that all too familiar archetype. I remember a lot of trepidation fighting against the hype, fighting against the recent misery over Ubisoft and how they are going to be remaking a Splinter Cell game. And
right.
I can already picture in my head what that would really look and feel like. I want to be surprised. I want to be surprised again.
That's kind of my worry about Dead Space, though. I've got some other gripes there.
Oh, Dead Space.
Yeah. Well, the first Dead Space is getting a next gen remake.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that strikes me as such a dirty thing, given EA's treatment of the development team for the originals and just their general handling of that franchise.
And how every sequel got more and more Gears of War-ified.
Right, the corporate meddling got worse and worse, and the sales got worse, and then they were just like, well, I guess your team just can't make a successful game. Bye. And then they announced the remake and are like, this game has such a strong legacy and it matters so much to us. And I'm thinking, none of the people who made that game are even at that company anymore. What are you talking about? You literally got rid of them all. And they're off making their own thing now.
Sounds similar to what the Metal Gear situation is right now.
Well, why do you think I don't want a Metal Gear remake of any kind?
Yeah.
It's not just because I don't feel like it's needed, which I don't feel like it's needed, but do you really expect anybody to get that right?
Yeah, it's gonna be tricky to nail. I mean, like we've all said, we just kind of really want the ports. We just want, especially with the recent news about PlayStation Now and them doing the that whole switch up. But they did just announce today some preservation teams that who knows what they'll preserve and not, but
I don't know.
Remember when they made a trailer for Death Stranding Director's Cut PlayStation 5 edition, and in the trailer Sam hides in a cardboard box but then puts the box on the shelf, and then there was like a lot of certain vocal minority of fans who thought that meant it was a stealth announcement of a Metal Gear remake or something.
Because what is subtext, right?
Something only cowards use.
I mean, I was told that I've been really enjoying myself with the director's cut, but I was told one of the new nightmares that I found in there was like a connection to PT.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Well, that seems innocuous enough compared to like a lot of the other Kojima conspiracy theories that get banded around.
a lot of the Kojima conspiracies are just in complete denial of the idea that a creator may sometimes do something more than once or reference previous work for fun, not because there's any sort of hidden message.
They also really don't like thinking about how expensive Metal Gear Solid 5 was and how expensive game development gets when you're also developing your own engine at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why MGS4 never got a port.
A lot of good PlayStation 4 or that PlayStation 3 hits are sadly destined for a slow, gradual decline down the memory hole if emulation doesn't pick back up. But wait a second, actually, I see on the outline that you wanted to talk about that Digital Foundry might have something to report with regards to PlayStation 3 emulation maybe finally picking up slack.
You just did a transition between topics like we do on the show. Like, I can't believe it. That was awesome.
That was a good segue.
Yeah, good job.
I'm interested in knowing because
Yeah.
the PS3 is a real hole in the emulation landscape. Like I think Switch emulation is in a better state last time I checked, at least. It might be different nowadays. We're about to find out, right? I remember Switch emulation being in a better state than PS3 was back when I last looked up this stuff.
The reason for that is a fair assessment. A big reason for that is that a lot of Nintendo's hardware doesn't really change much from generation to generation. You know, the joke that a Wii was 2 GameCubes duct taped together and a Wii U was 2 Wiis duct taped together. I mean, that's basically...
In the Wii/GameCube emulator, which was the same piece of software,
right.
You would just bring down your options menu and open up the controller mapping screen and go to Waggle and set it to like spacebar or something.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
But it's also the fact that they use hardware that's more easily usable. You know, developers are more familiar with it. They're not using anything special or particularly unique.
They repurpose last gen's hardware when they're like looking for suppliers and stuff.
Yeah, and with the PS3, you've got that gosh darn cell processor that forced developers to code themselves into pretzel shaped objects, and just it's getting a computer to emulate that requires it's got a lot of overhead.
So do you... Oh, sorry. Continue.
Well, I'll kind of wrap it up here because I tend to go on and on. RPCS3, which is the big PS3 emulation project, has been doing fantastically. The developers are miracle workers. I think they've got over 60% of the PS3 catalog now that you can just play fully, beginning to end. I mean, right now, one of the best emulated titles is the original Demon's Souls. They've even got private servers running, so if you want to go play that online, you can.
What do they do about DualSense controller functionality? I don't know. Maybe you're about to get to it, but I remember
it's fully supported.
MGS4 had some controller exclusive motion control features going on every now and then that weren't like a big part of the game, but something that supposedly would have made the porting process a little more difficult.
The motion controls, everything with the DualShock 3 or the 6-axis or whatever, that
that's
works.
what it was called back then.
Yeah.
When they couldn't get their vibrator from their vibrator suppliers.
It all works natively because when you use RPCS3, it just loads up the PS3's firmware. You know, you download it directly from Sony. They have it on their website. You can download easily, so it just
really?
It just grabs it and
Jesus.
You just go.
Well, that's a change of environment from back in the day for sure.
But you don't need a DualShock 3 to play it. The motion feature of that controller.
The waggle button. What do you bind the waggle button to?
Well, no, you can plug in a DualShock 4 or one of the PS5 controllers. You can just do it that way because it's got the accelerometer in it.
Okay.
So it can detect it. It doesn't need to have that exact controller. The only thing you're limited on are the few cases where games use the pressure-sensitive buttons, the face buttons.
Oh yeah, the PS2 games, the Metal Gear
Yeah.
Solid, those were the only games. I swear, if you know the other like 3 PlayStation 2 games that use that feature, please let me know, because I don't.
One of the Armored Cores had it as a core mechanic, where you had to like do a half press and then a full press to activate some special feature. And then there was like a music game that had you hit like different pressures to make sure you hit the drum soft enough. I mean, but it's such a small number of games.
Racing games that did it too.
I was supposed to say Gran Turismo had it.
Yep.
Didn't it?
Yeah, but a lot of those racing games you can, remap the controls.
Sure.
But man, that whole way of thinking of pressing a button really fizzled away with time. I miss.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can really say I miss it, because it's something that was hard to notice in the first place. But God, there's a lot of cool things that we could have been doing with pressure sensitive buttons this whole time.
MGS4 did have like 1, maybe 2 uses for the pressure sensitive controls, but it was nothing really, for lack of a better word, integral to the gameplay.
Not aiming and canceling a shot.
Right. Yeah. It was like how far you zoom in during cutscenes if you wanted to pan around or something like that.
Mhm.
Like that was one of them, and I think there was something else. But getting to the point, because I've been kind of going around here. MGS4, you can play from beginning to end, 4K 60 frames a second if you've got the hardware to run it. That's the big caveat right now.
Pretty much CPU dependent, right?
Yeah, it's RPCS3 is heavily CPU dependent. So, having a good GPU helps, but the big thing is you need a very powerful multi-core CPU in order to run it properly. But if you've got it, barring a few bugs and crashes here and there, for the most part you can play the whole game, front to back.
Yeah, and it is a pretty fussy setup too. Like, I mean, just getting all, like, you have to download a specific build of the emulator, and then you have to make sure all the settings are right, and then you have to get the Canary file for it, and then install the Canary build. It's
the TLDR here is that it's unoptimized, but you can do it.
It's getting there.
Fine.
Devs,
that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
I play games like that all the freaking time.
Yeah, me too.
We're not far from that game being playable for quite a wide selection of people.
That and MGO2 are also, like, MGO2 runs like butter pretty much. If
right, because they disable all the visual filters.
Yeah.
Also, I was just about to people can plug in some reshade into Metal Gear Solid 4, and finally, after 15 years or however long it's been, turn the brown and bloom a bit down.
God, I'll tell you, if you get a chance, go look up Digital Foundry's video that they just put out about it. If you want to see what an MGS4 remaster might look like.
Yeah.
It's crazy to see that game running at that high of a resolution at a reasonable frame rate.
Yeah. The PS3 was never kind to those first few big levels where you actually need it, where you need a third person camera panning around a bunch of chaos going on a battlefield, and you would inevitably see it drop.
It's kind of wild what they had to deal with when they were making that game, because I may have the details wrong here, but from what I remember, the early specs and example hardware that they sent to the bigger developers in advance of the PS3 coming out and the full development tools being distributed, those early specs were higher than what the eventual hardware was. And so you remember that very first real MGS4 trailer that looks super amazing, high frame rate, super detailed. It looks nothing like the final game.
Cigarette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That was made using those as a reference point.
I also want to further stimulate everyone's nostalgia here. Is this the trailer that ends with Snake saying something like, Otacon, the cell processor in the Sony PlayStation 3 is going to help us win this console war?
Yep.
God,
I remember.
Thanks for the reminder.
I remember.
The irony. I had a friend who years ago worked at EA, and it was during this generation, and he told me once that the PS3 was such a pain in the ass to develop for that anytime they were working on a multi-platform title, they would develop it for the 360 first and then port it, despite the fact that it would take a quality hit because it was just so damn difficult to do it the other way.
Yep, that's how it worked back then. And even though the PS3 was the more expensive purchase with the bigger, fancier hardware, you would have situations where like Bayonetta had a better version on the 360 instead.
Yep.
Yeah, that was the like slump that Japanese gaming was kind of going through. That like Phil Fish got in a bunch of trouble for commenting
Oh God, I
on,
forgot about
Yeah,
that.
every time I think about that
2008,
period,
2009.
unfortunately, Phil Fish is the first thing that Phil Fish making
Yeah.
fun of that poor indie developer is like the first thing that comes to my mind.
It took Japan a few years to get things back in gear.
Was it Kutaragi who said something to the equivalent of the reason they make the PlayStations so difficult to develop for is so that the games get progressively more advanced through the life cycle of the system? Something to the equivalent of that? Do you remember that? Have you ever heard anything like that?
It sounds like logic that gen would have phased away with the next one because Mark Cerny was all like, hey guys, we're basically making a computer you already know how to develop for this. PlayStation 4 coming out later this year.
Yeah, thank God. Just, I mean, it worked.
Everyone had to learn what x86 means that week.
Which, funny enough, despite the fact that MGS4 has never been ported to any other platforms, there is an x86 or Windows compatible build of that engine already that Konami used for Metal Gear Arcade.
Oh my god!
It runs natively
this
in
series is such a clusterfuck.
Yeah, it runs Metal Gear Arcade if you have the binary. The official binary that runs on those machines.
Yes,
it just runs in Windows.
Let me go get it.
You get
I have it in my pantry somewhere. One moment, please.
God.
But I can't believe that there's so many spin-offs that everyone completely forgot because unlike Metal Gear Survive, the series was not in jeopardy at the time and they could safely come and go without being remembered for this kind of long haul discussion we're having here.
I'm just shocked they never made a battle royale.
Oh, look at that.
I mean, technically speaking.
I know, yeah.
Sharper shadow resolution in the emulated version. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, it looks really good.
Otacon, RCPX3 is going to help us emulate this stuff 15 years later in the future.
If they ported it, how much would they have to change just to make it work? Like, you would have to be re-recording dialogue. They'd probably get rid of all the licenses,
for the
weapon
PC
licenses. Version? I'm saying if Konami officially ported, let's say the stars align, pigs fly, Konami decides to port MGS4 to literally anything else, are they going to go through the trouble of like stripping out all the Sony references and all the Apple merchandise and Regain and like the umpteen million weapon licenses
and they will do it on such a low cost of both money and labor because they could go to the David Hayter AI voice generator and just get a robot version of him to say something like press the left mouse button to activate your codec.
And like whenever a licensed product comes up on screen, there's just like a black box over it. Just inside.
No. It's got to be like
iPod.
those like from the rap videos. When they smudge out the logos. It's got to be like that.
Yeah.
It's just it's the Johnny blur. It's the Johnny Crotch blur.
Yeah.
Well, they already pulled off some similar stunts with the PC ports before. The world didn't end. There's some really weird lines in the Metal Gear Solid 2 port where you can hear the Colonel waking up on a very different day than the other parts of his sentence.
It's like suddenly he sounds 10 years older. Why?
Yeah. So no, they've done it before. It is not outside the realm of possibility. I mean, it's 2022.
Even with Death Stranding, with the Monster Energy drinks getting subbed out for just generic shit. Like,
I think he'd learned his lesson by then, and they knew that they would have to do something like that. Like,
in director's cut, it's Bridges energy drink. So now Bridges, apart from being the last remaining remnants of our federal government, it also has the time and resources to make energy drinks.
God.
I care very deeply about suspending my disbelief.
Just make an in-game brand, people. Just take 10 minutes and come up with a goofy idea and put it in.
Well, they do have that though with the Timefall beer.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's-
that. Yeah.
both.
It's
That's-
integrated.
How does it make it worse?
It just
I've never
compare
I've been mostly-
compare like Bridges energy drink and Timefall beer to like Tokugawa Heavy Industries or Saint Logic or any of these other Arms Tech or any of these other companies that they've created for other series that they at least take some time to come up with a name and a history and a logo and instead of just slapping a name on it.
One like advantage, and I mean this is objective scientific fact, you cannot dispute what I'm about to say. One advantage that silly product placement will always have over fictional brands is a little chuckle.
Yeah.
Every time I saw the Monster Energy drink in Death Stranding, I gave a little chuckle. And frankly, I don't know if I would have little chuckled as much as I did if
I
it
will
was
say
a
when
fictional
Kojima does
brand.
the product placement, I never feel like it's I never feel disgusted by it. It's
it's
I was-
always
by
for
it.
the for humor.
Like-
the Doritos and Peace Walker.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Peace
that
Walker
too.
literally has the gamer product trifecta of Doritos, Mountain Dew, and Axe body
And
spray.
they refill your health. Like
Right?
it is a parody in
Yeah.
all these big examples we're going through. It seems like it's a very self-aware parody of how silly it is in the first place. So I think it's not that bad.
Yeah, it's definitely better than the
I
subtle.
concede.
Yeah, but it's less
I-
expensive, so you got to pay for the gag. That's what it comes down
Kojima
to.
gets to cash in his Monster Energy check, and I get to have a little Monster Energy chuckle.
I hate it.
Do you think Kojima actually has had more than a single Monster Energy?
I
In his
think it
life.
is within the realm of possibility that he might have had two.
Okay.
Probably the white one, sugar-free one.
Those are better. The diet ones are better. They genuinely taste better.
I like the blue one.
Yeah, sugar free.
I know we're kind of going on long here, because we usually try to wrap up at about an hour and a half. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but there was something you mentioned, and I don't know if you wanted to take the time to touch on it or not.
Oh no.
But you mentioned briefly before the show that you had some thoughts about how MGS sort of ties into ancient mythology.
Or just like the way my interests developed as time and
Yeah.
aging went on. I
I
really
think you called it the MGS to ancient myth pipeline.
the idea of a magical realism setting really appeals to me. And I think it's because I was really into Metal Gear Solid as a kid and has this unique magical realism setting. And then I really got into ancient history over the past few years. A not so small reason why is that the Trump election was going on at the time, and the direction the world just seems to be going into really spurred a lot of fascination with me trying to figure out how we got here. And the discovery that in the ancient world, a lot of people would have viewed the real world as a magical realism setting, where the further and further back in time you go, the more and more superstitious a lot of their logic looks, but the more and more you research deeply into particular versions of ancient world logic, the more and more it really strikes me as inductive reasoning that makes a lot of sense when you try to immerse your brain from the perspective of someone who's dealing with a lot more unknowns and ignorance than people do nowadays.
That's interesting that you brought it up. Because not necessarily like it. I've explored a similar logic, not necessarily with ancient mythology. Well, I don't want to get controversial here, but yeah, I grew up in like a Southern Baptist church, right? So they were very adamant about following specific rules from the Bible. And I guess part of trying to, well, I guess live through that or accept it or understand it while I was a child was understanding that sort of historical context. So, for example, like they would always iterate, I'm probably not saying this right. They would always iterate like, oh, the pig is like a dirty animal, like it's the animal of Satan or something like that. When, there was some logic behind it in that like there were some like parasites or some particular organism that could not be cleaned out of pigs at that time period.
And
So
like a soft truth almost, where someone would say, "Don't eat those berries; they're cursed," and it will put a curse upon you if you eat that.
Just that curse is diarrhea. Yeah.
Right. The effect is, it does sort of go back to what you were saying about the method of reasoning, where the reason itself might not be correct, but they're making a not incorrect inference about the cause, about the action and the effect of that action.
I have a great example. The formal study of economics did not really become a thing until like mid to late 1600s at best ballpark estimate. However, for thousands of years before that, people knew that a farm that sacrificed its surplus animals was probably going to be doing better than the farms that didn't do their sacrifices.
Oh my gosh.
The idea of that inductive logic being like religious superstitious stuff, but actually plugging into a kind of like prototypical way of stabilizing society and running society in a way that they might not have been aware of, but we can translate nowadays into hard math is I think really, really important in terms of trying to understand why people in the past made the sort of decisions that they did. But to plug it actually into Metal Gear Solid stuff, it has to do with magical realism and the idea that crazy magical stuff could have been happening on battlefields. And I mean, safe bet it wasn't, but people would have genuinely believed it, and it carried grand historical consequences for future generations. I think ultimate example that a lot of mainstream normie people will know off the top of their head is Emperor Constantine having a vision of a cross flying in the sky before a battle, and there were letters under the cross that spelled out in Latin instructions to use a Christian symbol on their shields, and that would help them win the battle. And supposedly he had that vision, and they painted the Chi Rho symbol on their shields and won the battle and took it as a sign of divine intervention. A lot of stuff that nowadays we would attribute to luck and chance and a certain sort of random quality to the universe, they didn't have like complicated algebraic formulas to translate it that way, so they would assume a divine intervention. So a smaller example that's more obscure that sounds incredibly Metal Gear Solid-esque to me is something I read from Herodotus, where he tells the story of two armies. There's a Greek army fighting probably another Greek army, because that's usually how that would go. And one of them knew that a solar eclipse was about to happen. They had some predictive data from the wise man, from Miles of Miletus. Taylors of Miletos had given them a prediction that this eclipse was about to happen. The other side didn't. They didn't know what they were looking at. They were freaking out. They thought that it was an omen from the gods, and hurt themselves in their panic, compared to the other side, who didn't know what was going on, but at least knew to predict it, and fared better from it. The idea that a lot of the crazy stuff going on in a Metal Gear Solid story is something that sounds like emotional conjecture from a human brain piecing together things in the moment instead of sifting through evidence a few years later in the future really, really appeals to me in terms of reminiscing on the romantic adventure of those games and what kind of vibes they were trying to convey, and how a lot of them might be more older and primordial than most of us know.
This is not an exactly similar example, but you're reminding me a bit of not from Metal Gear, just kind of stepping away from a second, but did you ever play Silent Hill Shattered Memories?
Yeah, that was one of my favorites.
I love that game, and I felt like it was just a wonderful bookend to that franchise you didn't need anything else because of the way it's sort of framed. If you extrapolate out what that game did, you could almost say that all of this all of these weird happenings in the Silent Hill games could just be the manifestations of a troubled mind. In the case of Shattered Memories, spoiler alert, mute it for the next 10 seconds, the mind of a teenage girl who's trying to cope with the loss of her father.
Like, the psychologist is literally telling you that this is a childish fantasy you've been playing through.
Right.
Yeah, that was a fantastic game. Like, a real precursor, I think, to what Telltale would become famous for a few years later. I felt like a cool guy, because when everyone was playing The Walking Dead, I was like, oh, it's like Shattered Memories. You should go play that one, too. That's another good one.
That was one of the Western ones, too, which was even more surprising.
Yeah. Yeah, you said book into the series, and I wish it was. Man, how cool would it have been if that was the actual last Silent Hill?
It just felt like, what else do you need to... Where else is there to go, right?
We were talking about dumb little spin-offs. This is like a big, good spin-off.
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've always sort of felt like Silent Hill sort of hamstrung itself with Silent Hill 2. It was a victim of its own success in that regard. Every game after that sort of had to detach itself from the original premise of, spooky town with a cult, and instead go into, it's actually a manifestation of what you bring with you, blah, blah, blah. And
everyone brings with them sexy nurses.
Right, yeah.
Everybody's done something horrible before they've gone here.
If anything, the Silent Hill games make me feel like I'm the weirdo for, not being that big on sexy nurses. I don't know. Apparently that's a thing everyone else is into, I guess.
Have you gone to SilentHill.com recently?
Oh, I thought you were just about to say, have you gone to Silent Hill? Like just the town.
No, hopefully not. Yeah.
I haven't. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, if it's still there, you're gonna get a laugh.
Yeah,
it's still there.
I wish I hadn't designed Pyramid Head. Is this a real tweet? I'm conditioned not to think that things on the internet are real.
That is a real tweet, but...
All right, you're telling me this, but I'm still gonna Google it and fact check it.
All right, that's fine.
Go for it.
I respect you for not believing us.
Wish I hadn't designed Pyramid Head.
So I just want to...
Oh my god.
So not only has Konami lost ownership of that domain, but the guy who owns it put up a tweet from the guy who created Pyramid Head.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just a reminder of how the guy who created Pyramid Head does not own Pyramid Head.
Yep.
Yeah, you can work your ass off for another person's intellectual property, and even though you made that, they really own it.
It's so funny to look at Pyramid Head's design today in comparison to how he actually looked in Silent Hill 2, because they made him sexy. They flanderized the hell out of him.
It makes sense. Don't know if I like it, but it makes sense.
I guess.
I don't like it, but there's got to be a better way to explain that feeling of begrudging acceptance of how things just aren't the way you want them to be, but it makes perfect freaking sense that they are the way they are. I'm sure there's a big fancy German super word for that feeling.
Right? Yeah, they've always got good words for that. I'm still impressed by, what is it, Schadenfreude? Is that, I'm probably not saying that right.
Embarrassment on someone else's behalf. Yeah, it's an awesome word.
So I know that we're super over time. But I just want to make sure this does get covered, because I think Apache deserves it, considering he called it last episode.
Oh, no.
But it was funny because last week, or 2 weeks ago when we recorded, Apache was telling us about how there's an MGS speedrunner who was working on figuring out a way in a multi-segmented run to skip the ladder scene effectively. He's like, yeah, this dude's going to get it down in a week. You guys are going to see it. It's going to be the shit. And we're like, yeah, we're totally looking forward to it. Not that we didn't believe him, but, it was mostly just conjecture. Come the next day, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Appel is like, yo, I fucked the ladder. Yeah.
That literally was the next day. Yeah.
T poses up the MGS3 ladder. It's amazing.
Oh,
Just
man.
assert dominance and you're up.
stretch your arms out and fly, kid.
He looks like Christ the Redeemer when he does it.
So, have you guys been playing Elden Ring?
I did for a bit, yeah.
Did you see the tendency in that game for every single long ladder to have messages next to it referencing Metal Gear?
Yeah.
Without fail, every
That's
single
great.
ladder.
The little note, snake ahead.
We know what that reference is.
I did see a report of Japanese players being confused by why there were so many notes saying Fortnite.
Yeah, it doesn't translate well. Really incredibly fascinating article. I love stuff like that. I love cultures and how things do and don't translate the same through different human brains.
I've always wondered how much of Metal Gear we're missing as a result of that.
I love that shit. I was talking in the chat about how anachronistic it is that the end is dying in a forest, and one of his last thoughts is like, "Protect me, spirits of the forest." And this Shinto Buddhist Russian sniper from the 1900s is doing something really characteristically Japanese there, buddy.
And then he explodes.
And says, the end.
Have you ever noticed how the Japanese and English versions of the end, like, they just took totally different interpretations from the lines?
No, I have never listened. I listened to a bit of Japanese Metal Gear Solid 4, but I've never listened to Japanese Metal Gear Solid in general.
Well, there's that you get when you first knock him down. He gives like a random line. It's like one of 3 lines, and one of them is like, "The boss taught you well."
Mm-hmm.
And in the English, he says it really slowly. And in the Japanese, he fucking screams it down the microphone. it's so good.
Oh, he's way more eccentric in the Japanese.
Yeah, Japanese end is awesome.
Yeah, he's like in the US version, he's very somber and soft spoken and slow, and in Japanese, he's like.
The whole Cobra Squad sound like they would be a lot of fun. And just like really high-pitched, screechy Japanese comic antics.
Yeah, fun guys to get a beer with.
Pain as well is quite eccentric in Japanese, but he's eccentric in English. To be fair, they're not different.
He's a character who makes a lot more sense when you find out what Super Sentai poses mean.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of anachronistic, of these Russians in the Cold War doing Japanese stuff.
Right, which is also why they explode.
Yeah, no, it's to I'm sure there's a rational. Yeah, it's to keep their parasite technology from falling into the American hands.
But that's the reference, though, is it's a Super Sentai reference.
I hate that it's parasites. Oh my god.
Oh, I know, I hate it. It's Nanomachines 2.
No,
what a retcon.
God. I just wanted to accept magical realism. That's the thing. When you crack open the Iliad and the Odyssey, everyone has superpowers and no one questions it. Actually, no. People have superpowers and Homer justifies it by just saying, back when men were real strong men in those days, unlike you pansies now, Hector lifted a boulder and punched it with his fist.
It's
like... He emasculates the audience to justify the superpowers, and you could just roll with it. You don't gotta give Odysseus parasites.
You don't give Odysseus parasites.
It's a moot point in Metal Gear because they never explain Psycho Manus. So even if you explain every other thing, as long as he's still there, you haven't really solved it.
I love Metal Gear Solid 3 because it reads so much like a work of urban fiction, urban fantasy, modern mythology. But the nanomachines and the parasite stuff, as big a fan as I am, I will block it out. I would rather think of these characters in the same tradition as Greek demigods.
Well, that's a good comparison too. Like we always compare it to Star Wars with how just just the introduction of midichlorians. It's just like the parasites are like the analog version of the digital nanomachines. It's just this over explanation of everything. And when they introduced the midichlorians, it was like, oh, there goes all the fucking magic. So
you seem like the kind of guy I could get a beer with and complain about MGS4 for an hour.
I wonder what gave you that idea. So yeah, in ancient mythology, in Homer, the reason people have superpowers is because it was written like several hundred years after the fact, during a much worse time in Greek history, and Homer was being nostalgic and waxing about how much bigger and stronger men must have been back in those days.
Is that how the twin snakes happen? It's just like Otacon just remembering Snake being a lot stronger than he actually was. It's like they did a fucking flip over the hallway.
Threw a grenade into the barrel of a tank.
2,500 years later, Homer giving his characters superpowers, somehow one thing leads to another, and now we all have to deal with the implications of the VR simulation theory for Metal Gear Solid 2.
No.
It's like that domino meme.
Uh-huh.
Oh, man.
I love it, though. It really...
That is a perfect domino.
God.
I absolutely love having a nice, clean, clear narrative in my head that outlines a series of events going from Homer to the La-Li-Lu-Le-Lo.
You don't you don't need to explain everything. I don't think I really appreciated stories that remained sort of comfortably ambiguous until MGS4 came and kind of took a crap on MGS2.
And we also are now living in the age of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where if a company launches a new IP, they're going to want to, the safest bet is to make sure that you can have a billion other spin-off properties coming off of it as well.
Yeah.
Which means, with time, the, let's see, what's a good way to put it? The universal cosmological canon decay factor will weigh in a few years down the line. All of a sudden, the wizards at Hogwarts were shitting themselves all along, and we just didn't know.
Jeez. Oh, is this the death of fiction?
That's a great.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's a great way to describe the end of history.
So, speaking of things ending, do you guys want to talk about the future of the stealth game genre and other stealth games, or do we have time?
Do you have time, I guess is the question.
Yes, because
All right,
that
cool.
would give me an opportunity to talk about my Hunt Showdown addiction.
Do it.
Go for it.
Okay, so I've been cripplingly, unhealthily addicted to a multiplayer game lately called Hunt Showdown that I believe has a lot of appeal for Metal Gear Solid fans. It is a multiplayer stealth game that captures a lot of the ethos and ideas of Metal Gear Solid 3, but reinterpreting them into a competitive first-person shooter for kids who grew up on Counter-Strike, where you have to sneak through the woods around bad guys. There is a lot of camouflage happening at play. Almost all the combat that you do is like Looney Tunes slapstick comedy presented with this really serious aesthetic style, and it is an absolutely ingenious way of thinking of how stealth and violence should work in a video game. Hunt Showdown is genius, and here's why. It has always been a bit of a puzzle how to do stealth gaming mechanics from the first-person perspective. Usually what you see in most, let's say, Far Cry derivative-style first-person stealth system is your character just having straight-up X-ray vision. That is a concession from how in earlier third-person stealth games, and the Metal Gear Solid games, you'd have an overhead camera. The whole problem is how can you help a player be able to know what's on the other side of the wall before they turn around the corner and expose themselves. Hunt Showdown does this through sound design. The big gimmick going on here is that every single footstep every single player makes is loud as hell, and it ends up giving the game a mind-bogglingly array of possibilities in every match where your mind starts racing about how every single footstep that you're taking matters in a way that cascades into a series of other unfortunate events as the match goes on later. But there are like maybe 6 different footsteps surfaces that you can walk on, 3 different speeds of movement you can listen for on top of those surfaces, and the speed changes depending on which direction a player is moving. So you can effectively, after mastering the sound system, you can understand where another player is looking without having to look at them yourself, just by kind of judging the sounds of their footsteps. And it
that's
really,
wild.
it really does feel like immersing yourself into the head of a Solid Snake, Sam Fisher type character, where you're using a lot of more organic intuition of your brain, trying to get in the heads of the enemies and understand the patterns they've been walking through and the areas they've been paying attention to understand what route would keep you concealed from them, because it also is very much a stealth game. It takes place in the late 1890s, where every time you shoot a gun, it's going to take a minute to reload the next shot back in, and that kind of that ingeniously funnels all the combat down into little stealth puzzles of people trying to flank each other to sneak up on angles they're not looking at.
So everything has a heavy cost, every action.
Yes, they're a lot like Rainbow Six Siege and Counter-Strike. It's a tactical shooter where there is a big strategic element at play for all of the non-shooting actions you're going to be doing. But unlike those games, there's also a very big stealth system at play too. And it's just about the only time I've ever seen a multiplayer stealth game really work. And it's partially because everyone's on the same level playing field. Did you guys ever play the Spies versus Mercs mode in Splinter Cell?
Yeah, it was when you were talking about how first person shooting has like it's been touchy with stealth. That's exactly what I thought about.
Yeah, that game like played off the tension of it. Like you were either a big, slow, clumsy soldier inside their helmet, or a super sneaky, cool ninja with a third-person camera. In Hunt Showdown, everyone gets to be the sneaky, cool ninja. I remember that being a big dynamic. To Spies versus Mercs was no one. If you were playing as Mercs, you were tolerating it. You were really playing that mode because the spies get to do cool stealth stuff.
It's ironic, though, to think about this, getting the stealth multiplayer concept right. And I kind of looked up some footage real quick to sort of get a rough idea of it, and I can see what you're talking about. But it's interesting because Metal Gear itself kind of never got it. You know?
Yeah, they had that mode where you could you could have the camo, and then the other guys were trying to basically
guard
the
multiplayer. Yeah, it is a better execution of stealth multiplayer than any of the Metal Gear Solid multiplayers, which I don't know, in my humble opinion, they're fine.
They're fun, but they're not really heavily stealth based.
And I also couldn't play them forever like I can with Hunt Showdown. It is the most addicted I've ever been to a game. Easily. It is so surreal and magical having an experience where a real human player does something you would expect a dumb stealth AI guard to do. They recently added a gadget to Hunt Showdown where you have a throwable decoy, a distraction item, like in a stealth game. And usually in previous versions of the games, they would make a kind of metallic clanking noise, and in the latest patch, they rejiggered the game design. Those decoys now make a real, ordinary footstep noise that sounds just like a human player. And
oh man,
it is hilarious. You throw a distraction item, people come over to investigate with their backs turned to your hiding spot. And it opens them up for easy headshots. It's a really frustrating game to learn because so much of that combat is going to be one-shot ambushes from angles you weren't expecting. But with the way it designs the game and that sound system, the way it designs the map of the game and the sound system, you usually know when you're walking into someone else's trap. And it also kind of sort of puts you in the perspective of people getting sniped by Solid Snake from the corner too. Like you'll get shot and you won't know where it's coming from by someone who was sneaking, but it feels fair and deserved because you wandered into a dark, spooky area with scary footstep noises. So it doesn't feel unfair. Yeah, you will think back and be like, wow, 30 seconds ago, I acted like a dumb stealth game guard. and every now and then, every few matches, you will be the cool guy hiding in the shadows while the other players are dumb stealth game guards. And it's all because of how it arranges the objectives and the sound system and the way the map distributes cover versus open areas.
Quick aside, I will say that one thing that surprised me about Metal Gear Online is how often people ignore cardboard boxes.
I don't remember them being that useful.
I mean, the game sort of randomly scatters them around the map, and after a while, you sort of learn to ignore them. So when you drop into one, people tend to ignore it.
Yeah, you
So-
know what's hilarious is people using cardboard box strats in Elden Ring multiplayer too.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, there's other stealth games that are doing Metal Gear Solid stuff better than the actual official Metal Gear Solid multiplayer games.
yeah, that doesn't surprise me at this point, though. But first-person stealth, yeah, there hasn't really been anyone that's cracked it,
I think that
and this seems to.
I think that this one has cracked it, but I also, gotta give some old credit to Thief Games, which is why I also would want people to look forward to Gloomwood coming out. It just says soon right now, but
I am
all we can
unfamiliar
assume
with
is either later this year or next year. It is a indie first-person stealth game that is going to be made in the style of the old Thief games, except they are consciously saving on graphics budget by doing a kind of Valheim, low poly, low texture resolution pixel art style that
You had me
paints
at
beautiful
Valheim.
paints beautiful pictures from a distance, but when you get up close, you'll see the pixels and stuff. Yeah, Gloomwood, I think is a really good looking game that looks like another fun interpretation of being a sneaky bastard in a layer full of bad guys.
That sort of late 90s visual style, I mean, yeah, it was low fidelity, but man, there's just something charming about it.
I like how clean and easy they are to read. You can tell very easily which parts of the environment you can interact with and which you can't. And
Yeah.
that is always frustrating me in modern games is how much
the background
clutter
is blending into it. Yeah.
There's been like a second renaissance for PS1 style games.
Oh yeah, PS1 Bloodborne just came out
Right,
shortly
right.
before the announcement of PS1 Bloodborne Kart.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
That's amazing.
All right, George, we're coming up on 2 hours here.
Woo.
It's been a blast talking with you, man. We're all definitely big fans of your videos and all the critical close-ups over the years. And as Metal Gear fans, we appreciate you diving in deep. And
I promise not to bring it up.
It's fine.
yeah, we know that's old you. It's okay.
I'll expect the worst anyway, because Metal Gear Solid 2 predicted all of this anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, if you wanted to plug your stuff, where people can find your work online.
YouTube.com/Bunnyhop Show. Search for Super Bunnyhop and stuff I made will show up. Something new comes out every month, I hope. Sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but it happens at least. That much is reliable.
Yeah.
I stream every now and then. I have a lot of fun on Twitter. It's the trifecta of most influencers' content, right? Is the YouTube, Twitter, Twitch.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, like I said, we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, this has been a blast. I really do appreciate you coming on.
Oh yeah,
I've been asking
thanks.
for this as a birthday gift since this podcast has been in production. So
I hope I was less disappointing than I could have been.
That was great.
Yep, thank you guys.